wonderful words of life. Offer pardon and peace to all, wonderful words of life. Jesus, holy Savior, sanctified forever. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Beautiful words, wonderful words, wonderful words of life. Page 628, 628. If the name of the Savior is precious to you, if His care has been constant and tender and true, if the light of His presence shall brighten your way, oh, will you not tell of your gladness today? Oh, will you not tell it on that today? Will you not tell it on that today? If the light of His presence has brightened your way, oh, will you not tell it today? If your faith in the Savior has brought its reward, if the strength you have found in the strength of your Lord, if the hope of a rest in His presence is sweet, oh, will you not, brother, the story repeat? Oh, will you not tell it on that today? Will you not tell it on that today? If the light of His presence has brightened your way, oh, will you not tell it today? If the souls all around you are living in sin, if the Master has told you to bid them come in, if the sweet invitation they never have heard, oh, will you not tell them the cheering word? Oh, will you not tell it, not tell it today? Will you not tell it, not tell it today? If the light of His presence has brightened your way, oh, will you not tell it today? Mark your Psalms, page 905, 905.
Is that thing on? Well, I have to do something.
It's off.
I like it, not having to do something. All right, tonight we're going to take on the the smallest book in the Old Testament. The smallest book in the Old Testament. There are a lot of small ones, but Obadiah is the smallest book. Shortest of all, 21 verses, I believe. And there's a lot of things about Obadiah that tonight I'll get to say we don't know. You might decide after a while, why bother with this lesson? We don't know some things. But you know what? I'm confident we know everything we need to know. So let's don't get disillusioned by not being able to answer some of the questions associated with the book of Obadiah. Now, I'm not going to put those 21 verses up on that screen for you. So get your Bible. I'll be reading out of the King James when I read some of these verses, and probably most of them. But so get you a book so you can follow along with me. But let's get some. I have the privilege tonight of reaching and grabbing some other stuff in history and things associated with the book of Obadiah for your benefit, and my benefit too in the studying. Some of the guys are going to be dealing with some of these minor prophet books that are quite long, and they won't be able to get through all of the meat of those books, let alone history around them and associated circumstances. But tonight I have the privilege of adding some things to it. We'll start with Obadiah. Who was Obadiah? Well, we just run out right there. Did you hear what he said? He said a prophet. He's just a wise fellow. But he exhausted everything he knows about Obadiah. That's what he did. He exhausted it all. There are some people who are fans of Obadiah being this Obadiah, that Obadiah. The fact is, I didn't ascertain this for myself, but we're told, or I was read, that there are about 13 Obadiahs that surfaced in the Old Testament. 13 different ones. That may or may not be true, but there are several, we know that. And some people try to the book of Obadiah to one of them. For instance, and this kind of works, this is a Jewish tradition, let me underscore that. There was an Obadiah that was a steward, you might say, in King Ahab's kingship. Worked for him. And this particular Obadiah, he had 100 prophets from Jezebel. Sounds like he's on our side, right? Sure enough. That's Ahab's wife, by the way. And this man from his youth feared the Lord. 1 Kings 18, verse 12. And he lived in a time that might have fell in there and been made him likely or possibly the author of Obadiah. He did. It could have been the Obadiah sent by Jehoshaphat to teach the law in Judah in 2 Chronicles chapter 17 and verse 7. And he too lived at a time and fell in the time slot that could have been perhaps the Obadiah that writes the book Obadiah. Could have been. There was an Obadiah who was an overseer in repairing the temple under Josiah in 2 Chronicles 34, verse 12. He could have been also fell into the slot to have written Obadiah. If the second date that we're going to talk about in just a minute is when Obadiah was written, because see, that's the next question. Not only do we not know who wrote Obadiah, other than a man named Obadiah. That's all we know. A prophet. We don't know when it was written. Don't know where to put it. Don't know how to plug it in. We get some little tendencies from the writing that suggest certain things, and for that reason, certain people fall out and say, well, this is when it was written, and others will say, no, it was written over here. The truth is, I'm back to what I told you a while ago. We don't know. We don't know who I was, and we don't know when it was written. There are two dates that commonly thrown out there, and we'll visit both of them quickly. The first one is around 840, 45 BC. First date. The second date is when the Babylonians went into Jerusalem, or thereabouts, 586 BC. Now that's a pretty good span there, several hundred years. And I told you we don't know, and we don't even know the several hundred years. We just don't know. We were not told. And so most of what we do about this is kind of guess, and some of that from the way things shape up. The first date, well, let me say this. When we get into Obadiah here in a minute, you're going to see that when the Lord's talking, he's talking about something that happened, a calamity that befell Judah. They were attacked. They were overrun. He talks about that in Obadiah. We know that. So Obadiah was written after that calamity took place. So we go to look at it now, well, when did Israel face some calamities? Well, there were a lot of them. And we're not sure every one of them was recorded. But two that jump out at us is the first one is in 848, 844 BC when the Philistines and the Arabs together in league, confederate, jumped on Judah and overran it. That's what gives us the 845, 848 BC slot for the book. And the other one will defer all the way back down to 600 BC or thereabouts, and that's when the Babylonians came in and ransacked the city and tore down the tabernacle and did everything they did. So we have these two clear cases of Judah being sacked. The first one not as harsh as the Babylonians, I might add. And that's why these two dates emerge. So just something in the back of your mind you want to know. I would add this, there's language in Jeremiah 49th chapter that mimics very closely some of the language we find in Obadiah. Jeremiah was written closer down to 600 BC. That doesn't mean anything as far as placing when Obadiah was written. Because any prophet could have easily received the same information to write, or could have been copied from Obadiah. There's nothing that says he couldn't do that. So it's kind of interesting. All right. Enough about who wrote it. He was a prophet. And when it was written, we're almost clueless. Okay? But I'll give you some tips. I want to tell you something, though, before we go any further, about Obadiah. Obadiah is a book written to Edom, the Edomites. And they were an unruly bunch of people. We'll talk about them a little bit in a minute here. That's next. But I want to start out with what was the problem with the Edomites pestering the Israelites. What was the problem with that? And in Genesis chapter 12 and verse 3, when God was setting up and making promises to the Israelites, the Hebrew people, as to what he was fixing to do and how it's fixing to happen, he says this. He says, I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curse thee. That's what God said about the Hebrew people. His promise to Abraham. That's what he said. Anybody that messes with you, I'll deal with. So you want to know why the Edomites fell out of favor with God? They got crossways with God's first edict, almost, concerning his people. Don't mess with my people. They got in trouble there. Okay. Let's look at some things now. Is this thing ready to go? Apparently not.
You got to point this way.
Got what?
Point it this way.
Oh.
Slides change.
What am I pointing at? Tell me what I'm pointing at. Learning thing. Oh, that Google glitch. Oh, yeah. Well, that doesn't work either. Oh, we're moving too fast. Let me back up. There we go. All right, here's a little mouth. We'll give you a little. See, I've got time to do some of this. Let's, let me turn around here. Okay, this thing's going to be turning. All right, can you see the big yellow circle up there it is. That's Edom. According to this map, I qualified it, okay? You can find 15 or 20 different maps of the Canaan land, Holy Land, all of this area, and all of them will show it a little different, and it has to do with time, the time that the map was formatted as far as in history. This is Edom. This is the Edomites. This is where they live. Notice this little group of people right here, the Nabateans, if I'm pronouncing it right. They play a part in all this. Remember that. Edom was not a big country. This map shows it to be a pretty good-sized country, but it really wasn't. This is the biggest map I can find of the Edomites. See Petra right there? That's one of their chief cities, loosely. They were neighbors of the Moabites, which they would get in league with. When they wanted to jump on Israel, they'd get in league with the Moabites. Or over here with the Philistines. Or somebody else. Maybe go up here and catch Tyre or Sidon, these city-states up here. Or even the Ammonites or others. That was the strength of the Edomites doing anything. They were a small group of people, generally speaking, but when they wanted to pester somebody, they had buddies and in league and create confederacies. Let's move on to another story. Okay, I got to turn. I'm not pointing it that way. All right, we're going to learn. Look at here. Look at Timbal right there. I don't know what that means, but there's Petra. Here's the outline of Edom. It's showing it a little different. I want you to notice a few things. So here's Judah right in here. Moabites over here. The Arabia Valley comes out of the Dead Sea area and goes down into the Red Sea right here. That's interesting. Here's Petra. Basra, all of this northern Edom. Right in here, you see the Seir Mountains. You see that? Petra's right here at the edge of the Seir Mountains. This red line is travel routes, trade routes. That's trade routes. It moved back and forth from Egypt over here, Arabia down in here, going up north. They were sitting in the middle of these trade routes, and some of their money they made, I think, was robbing the caravans. But they were rough people. Who were? Let's look a little further. Another bit of bad history. Let's go here. Does anybody recognize that map? You recognize that map, what it's about? Yeah. Poor old Moses was down there trying to lead that aggravating bunch of people out of Egypt. And in Numbers chapter 20, he comes up, he's getting ready to, where he's headed, he's way on up here, he's trying to get into Jericho, going up through here, that's where he wants to go. And God is leading him down through all this country and right up here at Kadesh Barnea, that's where it's at. And he wants to cross and go across the Edomite territory right there and get in here on this travel route. It's a main highway, or travel route, if you will, that goes up there because he was going up through offset from Jericho. Well, when he gets right in here, you see where he makes this hard turn to the right? In this map, he's going south. Let me read to you, this is a little more history about this group of people. Numbers chapter 20, verse 14, it says, And Moses sent messengers from Kadesh unto the king of Edom, thus saith thy brother Israel, remember that. Thou knowest all the travel that hath befallen us, how our fathers went down into Egypt, we have dealt in Egypt, dwelt in Egypt a long time, and the Egyptians vexed us and our fathers, and when we cried out unto the Lord, he heard our voice and sent an answer, and hath brought us forth out of Egypt, and behold, we are in Kadesh, the city in the uttermost of thy border. In other words, we're right here on your border. Let us pass, I pray thee, through thy country. We will not pass through the fields or through the vineyards, neither will we drink of the water of the wells. We will go by the king's highway. We will not turn to the left nor to the right hand until we have passed thy borders. And Edom said unto him, Thou shalt not pass by me, lest I come out with thee with a sword. Edom wouldn't let him pass. You ain't crossing here. If you want to get over there on the King's Highway going north, you got to go around us. So then they had to walk all the way back down here, come over here, get under them, and come up the other side. Just a little more history. Okay, enough of that. Let's get over here and do some other stuff. The history of the Edomites, a little history. Does anybody know their history? Where did the Edomites begin? Who is the single figure of the Edomites?
They were descendants of Abraham's other son with Hagar or
Isaac and Rebekah.
It's from Esau's line, they're descendants of Esau.
That is correct. And Esau was Isaac and Rebekah's son. So Esau and Isaac and Rebekah had another son. What was his name? Jacob. Both of them play into this. So you have two sons here. Loosely, the language is that Jacob in our story tonight will be the people of Israel, the Hebrew people, God's people. It'll even go into being, I believe, the church. The history of Edom is two twins struggling in their mother's womb. Y'all remember that story, don't you? Where they wrestled and Esau was born first, but Jacob had his hand on his heel. You remember the story of Esau selling his birthright to Jacob for some bread and a bowl of bean soup? Remember that story? Esau sold his birthright to Jacob. Little bit of the issue there. You remember where Jacob stole Esau's blessing with the help of his mother? I don't know about that girl. So that, look, I'm trying to get you to see that. These two sons were eventually reconciled in Genesis chapter 32 and verse 33. It's an interesting story. Jacob was actually afraid of him, and he sent an entourage ahead of him, thinking if he kills them, I know he'll probably kill me so I can run. It was kind of interesting, but they reconciled, and they parted ways sort of amicably. if you can call it that. So there was always issues right under the surface between Esau and Jacob, the two brothers, who were the fathers of the two peoples in the book of Obadiah. They are the two great-grandfathers. Edom was a problem for Israel most of their time together. As you can see from the map, that Edom was just below Israel, the land of Canaan, the promised land. And they were always nip and tuck. There was one period of time in Edom's history where King David subjected them and even took over and ran the country. He had ships down there in that Red Sea body of water that comes up there just below Edom. David overran them and subjugated them. But during the reign of Jeroboam, 150 or so years later, they revolted. Edom revolted, and they stayed in that state until they were finally overrun by our story tonight. What's interesting about this group of people is how they live. That's a real nice picture. I'm going to go past it and show you this. Their stronghold, the Edomites, their stronghold was the Seir Mountains. And the mountains were seems to me like fairly bare. Not a lot of vegetation. They were steep-sided. And this is a picture of some from Petra City. And they're just now in the last few years beginning to really do some excavations on the Edomites and find out a lot of things nobody ever really believed. Petra City was only discovered in the last 20, 30, 40 years, something like that. So this is a picture. I'm going to back you up to the picture of the same thing. Well, I'm reverse. Let me get this thing. I'll figure this thing out. How do you reverse it? I'm getting there. That's a picture of what you were just looking at, but this is at night. But the reason that I wanted you to see it this way, see that right there? See how steep this side is? This very narrow ravine. Do you see that? That was the Edomites' advantage. They lived in those mountains, in those deep ravines, steep-sided, you couldn't climb. And it didn't take very many of them with some good spears and even just a handful of rocks to repel any kind of attacking force. And this is one of their strengths. They lived in these mountains and nobody could get out. And they pestered everybody. They were just aggravating thing is if you begin to read into all of what they did. Okay. They after the prophecy of Obadiah, and we'll take the 848 BC time frame, the Edomites were overcome by, remember I showed you a while ago, the Nabateans, the Arabs. They began to push on them and contract their country. In fact, what they actually did, I was hoping this thing would work real good. You can back it on up one more, please. There you go, thank you. The Nabateans here pushed on them and pushed them into a smaller area right in here just south of Judah. And this is where they were in the last a few hundred years of their existence. They were very large at times, but this group right here gave them a big push and overcome them. Those were Arab tribes of sorts, is what the Nabateans were. And they overran them and forced them to settle south of Judah. They were also overrun by the Babylonians when the Babylonians came in and sacked Judah. 2 or 3 years later, they went on down there and gave the what was left of the Edomites a pretty good licking. Also, that wasn't enough. The John Hyrcanus of the Maccabees in 100 to 150 BC, he also went down there and subjugated them. And he forced them, when he went in with his armies, to become Jewish proselytes by force. And they became students of the law, and they were circumcised Jewish proselytes. One of the Jewish proselytes that was Edomite background was Herod the Great, one who killed John the Baptist. And about around 100 AD, some historians say Edom as a race and a nation was gone, no more. And if that doesn't really hold up, certainly by the time the Romans took care of Jerusalem in AD 70, the Edomites were gone. No more. Now let's find out a little bit why that happened, how that all played out. We know they were kin to the Israelites. They were brothers. By generations removed, I understand, but they were brothers. They were kin. But why did that all happen? And that's what the book of Obadiah is about. And somehow or another, I got off of my Obadiah. Let me find Obadiah. When it's only one or two pages, that's kind of hard. All right, here we go. I'm going to, I don't know why I did that. Let's get to something here. I'm on sweetheart. That's one. You sure I'm supposed to point it at that gizmo? Y'all get it somewhere. I may get there. There we go. Here let's just start looking at the book of Obadiah. If you have a Bible with you, follow along with me, and I'll do some reading. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to read the first verse and make a few comments here. It says the vision of Obadiah. Well, this is God talking to Obadiah. What did God allow Obadiah to see? Thus saith the Lord God concerning Edom. No doubt who this is directed at. We have heard a rumor from the Lord, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. Notice where he went. The heathen, arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. There was a decree that went out to all the heathen nations. And who sent that decree out? Who? You were going to do a talk on the things that we don't know, that God doesn't tell us, aren't you? You said something about that. I may be speaking out of turn. But here's one of them right here. We don't know how God sent this decree out to the heathen nations and started something going that turned on the Edomites. See, one of the strengths of the Edomites was all their friends around that they confederated with, that they rallied with, and they worked with, and that was a strength of theirs. But God started turning all that around with the heathens. Don't trust them, can't trust them, watch them, this, that, and the other. How he did it, I have not a clue. See, I'm back to not knowing. I told you, you're going to wonder why we're having this talk. We don't know how God did it. But I want you to notice this. If God did that to the Edomites a couple of 25 or 2,800 years ago or 2,900 years ago, whenever it was, what's he doing to us today? Won't you just think about it? I can't answer that question either. But I want you to notice that God is in charge. God is using, and who is he using? Is he using saintly people? Is he using Christian people in this exercise? Look at verse 1. Who did he send this ambassador to? He sent him to the heathens. God uses the heathens just like he uses the Christians. Now, different jobs, understand. But he uses them, and I want you to see that. Let's go on to verse 2. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. God did that. He says, I have made. God is running the world. believe it. There's not an aspect of it his finger's not in. And that's what you see in verse 2. He was directing somebody to create animosity between the heathens and the Edomites. His mission is to destroy the Edomites. But look how he's doing it. He's in charge. Verse 3, the pride of thine heart hath deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rock, whose habitations is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? See, the Edomites couldn't be touched. Everybody that went after them, they would run up to them little ravines, and they'd all be up there with their spears and their arrows and their big rocks or whatever other defenses they had, and nobody could get at them. And they was scared. I can do anything I want. You can't do nothing. And they were proud. And they were arrogant. And God doesn't like that. He doesn't like it one bit. That's precisely where these folks were. They were deceived by pride in their location. You can't touch us. We're untouchable. Though thou exalt thyself as the eagle, see up high, seer mountains, remember? And though thou set thy nest among the stars, thence will I bring thee down, saith the Lord. I don't care how high you get, I can handle this, God said. And that he does. Verse 5. If thieves came to thee, if robbers by night, how art thou cut off? Would they not have stolen till they had enough? If the grape gatherers come to thee, would they not leave some of the grapes? How are the things of Esau searched out? How are his hidden things sought up? These two verses are saying this. Simply, if you had been broken into by thieves, what would thieves take? They'd only take what they could carry, and they would take the best. But that's not what's going to happen. That's what he's telling you. That's not what's going to happen. When we break in, when this happens, they're going to take everything. You will be penniless. All the men, verse 7, of thy confederacy, see, they were in league with a lot of these people. They were all buddies with a bunch of these nations, and it was in that working that they were able to pull off all the shenanigans. All the men of thy confederacy have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound unto thee. There is none understanding in him. Now, what's all this about? All the men of thy confederacy have turned on you. And they have now even confined you to don't even come to us. We don't want you in our country. You stay in your country. You stay across your border. You leave us alone. We don't want nothing to do with you. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee. And I'm telling you the truth. And prevailed against thee. They eat thy bread. There were some amongst them that they thought they could trust. But when this thing began to turn around, this ambassador began to sow these seeds of doubt. Even folks within Edom began to work against Edom. That's what's being said. They've laid a wound unto thee. There is none understanding in him. In other words, you Edom don't even realize what's happening. Things are turning on you. You're not who you thought you were. And when it starts happening, you will find out you don't have any friends. That's what that verse is telling us. Verse 8, Shall I not in that day, saith the Lord, even destroy the wise men out of Edom and understanding out of the mount of Esau? The northern part of Edom there were some towns, and they were noted for being wise people there. The next verse, and thy mighty men, O Teman, shall be dismayed to end that every one of the mount of Esau may be cut off by slaughter. In Job, there was a man, Job chapter 2, verse 11. Eliphaz, is that how we pronounce that? Eliphaz? That's close enough. He was one of Job's buddies. Remember, Job had some friends, the Tenamite. He was from northern, I think, I'm a little bit, I don't want to say that. He was from northern Edom. He was Edom. From Timon, the Timon. A lot of these towns, we really don't know for sure where they were. Because, see, God's going to destroy it. When God destroys it, it's just like Sodom and Gomorrah. You know, we're still looking for Sodom and Gomorrah. When God gets ready to put his thumb on something, it's not a half job. It's not kind of done. It's done. They gone. And that's the problem with Edom. That they're archaeologists are finding things, but we don't know where a lot of this stuff is. Not so sure about it. All right, let's get on. The reasons for this, let's get on. Let's see if this thing will get with me. Oh, you guys, there we go. It's getting better. Never was me. Right? You got to believe that. Verse 10. Now we're going to hear exactly why God's doing this, okay? We're going to hear it. For thy violence against thy brother Jacob, shame shall cover thee, and thou shalt be cut off forever. God says that as an uphold. I mean, that's what he said. Forever. No more. In the day that thou stoodest on the other side, in the day that the strangers carried away the captives his forces, and foreigners entered into his gates and cast lots upon Jerusalem. So see, now we know something happened in Jerusalem, and that's what this is all about. Even thou wast as one of them. He didn't say you was one of them. He said you was like one of them. In other words, you stood off and you didn't help your brother Judah. You didn't help your fellow Israelites. He wasn't Israelite, he was Edomite, but they were brothers back there. I showed you where they were kinfolk. You stood there and let it happen. Therefore, you just as much as done it. That's what God's done. Not good. Now, I don't know what version of the scripture you have, but I'm going to point something out and get on out of here. Verse 12. Verses 10 and 11 tend to be looking back at something that happened. Okay? But if you have any of the other versions other than King James, you'll see the tense change in the next 3 verses. They're going to continue talking about some things, and I'm going to read the King James. If you have an American Standard Version or an NIV, you're going to see the tense change. And it's going to look like the first 2 verses we're looking back, and the next 3 verses is looking forward towards something that is coming. That's just a notion. Don't get excited about it. Depends on which version you have. Just a little tense change. Might not mean nothing. Might mean a whole lot. Let's read it. Verse 12. But thou shouldest not have looked on the day of thy brother and the day that he became a stranger, neither should. Now I'm reading the King James, and it looks back, okay? But I'm not so sure I'm comfortable with that. But I wasn't going to bring 2 Bibles up here, and we got one verse and another verse, so bear with me on that. Neither shouldest thou have rejoiced over the children of Judah in the day of their destruction, neither shouldest thou have spoken proudly in the day of their distress. Thou shouldest not have entered in the gate of my people in the day of their calamity, yea, thou shouldest not have looked on their affliction in the day of their calamity, nor have laid hands on their substance in the day of their calamity. Okay? So he pretty much lays out here for them all the things that they shouldn't do. One more verse. Neither shouldest thou have stood in the cross way to cut off those of his that did escape. Neither shouldest thou have delivered up those of his that did remain in the day of distress. In other words, he pretty well throws a book at them that when somebody attacked Jerusalem, they did things that were against the Jerusalem inhabitants. That's what they did. And for that, God's called them to test. Okay? And he tells them here, shouldn't have done it. Bad thing. Then he says in verse 15, for the day of the Lord is near upon all the heathen, as thou hast done, it shall be done unto thee. Thy reward shall return upon thine own head. For as ye have drunk, let me stop. In verse 15, he's speaking to the Edomites. But it appears, and this is a little hard to follow, bear with me on it. verse 16, it seems as if God turns here and now he starts talking to the Israelites. And he'll do this. This book of Obadiah is good news to the Israelites. The Edomites has pestered them all of their existence. Always been a thorn in their side. Always doing something to them. Always been a problem. So this is good news to the Israelites. And apparently they have recently been attacked by somebody, and some of them are in exile or in captivity. And this book is going to be good news to them that they wanted. You know, what's the first thing the Israelites would do if they got attacked? What would you think would be the first thing they'd do? They would what? How about pray to God? Yeah, pray. Get this thing off of us. And this is kind of an answer to that prayer. Should they have prayed? Nothing they would have. And so in verse 16, he's going to turn now and he's going to start talking to the Israelites. He says this, for as ye have drunk upon my holy mountain. Now what he's saying there, as you, the people of Israel, of Judah, have been afflicted, you have been tormented in Jerusalem. That's kind of what that verse is laying out. So shall all the heathen drink continually. You got it, and now it's their turn. They're going to get it. They're going to drink continually, and they shall drink, and they shall swallow down, and they shall be as though they had not been. In other words, when we get through with them drinking, being afflicted, and being persecuted, they'll cease to exist. That's what he's saying. Verse 16. Let's go on. But upon Mount Zion, now the whole picture is beginning to turn. We've been talking about literal up to now, for the most part. But now, as most prophets do, he's talking to the Israelites. Some of them are in exile, some of them may be in captivity. They're under distress. And now he's doing what most of the prophets will do. He's pointing to something off out there in the future. And it no difficulty for us to understand what it is because we have the New Testament. We understand. But for them, it was just beyond their sight. But he's talking about something out there in the future. Watch it. But upon Mount Zion shall be deliverance. Oh, that was good news. They wanted that. And there shall be holiness. See, we're moving from literal now to figurative. We're moving to spiritual. That's where we're going. And the house of Jacob shall possess their possession. Well, you can take that any kind of way you want. But the house of Jacob would be God's people, and they've been promised something all of their existence. What was it? A future, forgiveness, hope, life with God. They had something, but they didn't quite have it. He calls it their possession. They're going to actually possess their possession. He's talking about salvation. Now, you can say, well, he's talking about they're going to come back to Jerusalem physically, and they're going to have the city, and they're going to be in control, and all these things, yeah. But he's really reaching out there further than that. I believe that. Watch it. 18, in the house of Jacob. And let me turn on get here. And the house of Jacob shall be a fire, and the house of Joseph a flame. That's not literal. That's big. Talking about spiritual things. And the house of Esau for stubble, and they shall kindle in them and devour them, and there shall not be any remaining in the house of Esau, for the Lord has spoken. And you might say there that Joseph was God's people. Any generation you call God's people. And Esau are the heathen in any generation that you want to attach it to. Loosely, I think you can say that. Verse 19. And they of the south shall possess the mount of Esau. He's going to go so far as to tell them that you're going to be possessing. They of the south, in verse 19, is southern, is Judah. He's saying you're going to possess the Mount of Esau. That's all the way down there to Petra. That's the Seir Mountains. He's telling them, he's talking to the Israelites now, talking to the Jewish people, the Hebrew people. And he's telling them, you're going to own that land, it's going to be yours all the way to Petra. And they of the plains, the Philistines, and they shall possess the fields of Ephraim and the fields of Samaria, and Benjamin on the other side of the Salt Sea and the Sea of Galilee, if you go far enough north, shall possess Gilead. What he's essentially saying here is that Israel is going to come back and possess all this land, on all of it. That's what he's saying. Next verse, in the captivity of this host of the children of Israel shall possess that of the Canaanites, even unto Zarephath. That's way north of the Mediterranean coast. And the captivity of Jerusalem, which is in Sepharad, and I have no idea where that's at, but I feel like I'm in good company. Because I couldn't find nobody else that knows where it's at. Nobody has a clue. Lightfoot, one of the commentators, Lightfoot, he said, oh, that's in Edom. Well, that's pretty good because you can't find it. Who guards you with it? We don't know where that's at. Shall possess the cities of the south. Verse 20 is essentially saying that God is going to bring his people back and they're going to own it from the north to the south. It's all going to be God's country. And you can take that literal if you want, but it won't be right because he never did. So then it must be figurative, meaning that in the end, it's all going to be God's people, God's land. And that could even come across the ocean to the United States, you know. When you look at it like that, and I believe that's a fair way to do it. And the last verse, and saviors shall come up on Mount Zion. That's a place in Jerusalem, but that's figured. To judge the mount of Esau, that too is figured. And the kingdom shall be the Lord's. It's the whole thing that went through. A pronouncement of God's people being in charge and the heathens subdued. You find language like that, saviors, who are those? I don't know. But Matthew 19:28, Jesus talks about 12 apostles sitting on 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes. Might be a link there. Just keep that in mind. I'm running out of time, and it's y'all's fault. Y'all don't do much. Let's get to 3 lessons. Let's get to 3 lessons. We're going to get them in. You watch me. Turn me loose. Here we go. Get that. 4 lessons in the book of Obadiah. Pride goes before destruction. Proverbs 16:18. Pride goes before destruction. That was the problem Edomites had. Leads to vanity, a sense of independence. They didn't need God. They had their high-walled canyons, easily fortified. They were a mean, fierce people. They had dug caves out into the mountains. They're still finding those caves full of stuff. And they lived in that, and they could repel any kind of invasion or any kind of army, and for that they didn't need God. Don't need God. They were proud. They were arrogant. And that was a calamity of theirs. We'll go on. Do not mistreat your brethren. This is clearly one of their issues. How do we treat our brethren affects our relationship with God. But when you sin so against the brethren and wound their weak conscience, you sin against Jesus Christ. You have to be careful when dealing with each other. They mistreated their brethren. They were mean scoundrels. But God helped them till they passed out of existence, like he said they would. Yeah. Do not rejoice when your enemy falls. Look at that verse, Proverbs 24:17-18. Read that just quickly. Rejoice not when thine enemy falleth, and let not thine heart be glad when he stumbleth, lest the Lord see it. Watch this. And it displease him, and he turn his wrath from him. How you treat somebody that may not necessarily be one of God's people might cause God to think more of him and less of you. That's what he said. That's powerful. But you know what? I think there's one more here that I want to spend a minute on. There it is. This is one more thing that I think the book of Obadiah underscores. Now, all throughout the Bible, we run into this lesson. It's not a secret, but it just jumps out there. Here it is. Our concept of time and God's concept of time and all is just 2 different things. And we acknowledge that. We're all familiar with Be not ignorant of this one thing, and that one day is with the Lord is 1,000 years remote. We are all familiar with that, but how well do we really grasp it? I don't know. Let me tell you something. The other day, I was working for the missus, and she's a slave driver. Y'all know that? That girl always got something to do. And I stuck a nail in the heel of my thumb there. And it hurt. It wasn't that bad, but it got up in there and all that thing. You can't do anything without your thumb. It hurt. I don't care what I was trying to do. I was trying to paint a house. They're trying to hold a paintbrush, trying to work around the whole thing. But I brushed it off and went on. And you know why I did that? I'm going to tell you why I did it. Because I knew that as bad as it hurt today, tomorrow it would be what? No. It was going to get better. Time. Now, the first day you might be right. The next day it might have been sore. That's where you're going. But time makes it better. Time. Every time I ever got hurt, I've always got better with time. Time's been my friend. That's right. Time's been my friend. And I don't care how many times I've got hurt, bummed up, beat up, this, that, and the other. I can brush it off and get through it 2 or 3 days. I got a bruise right there on my back of the arm. See that there? You know what happened there? The cable snapped and chain hit me. See that? And it's sore. Whoo! See that? Busted up the ear there. Same thing. But time is on my side, and I'm going to get better with time. Time's my friend. I lost a brother here a few months back. Y'all know aware of that. Y'all lost a friend. I get it. And that's tough. You know, I still have problems with that. But I tell myself, because it's true, time makes it easier to deal with. Time is my friend in that sense. It'll get to where I can deal with it pretty good. I did with my folks. We've all lost folks, and we all struggle with that. But time is better, didn't it? Not time is that's not working. The Edomites, if they got this letter in 840 BC, and they didn't really begin to get pushed on for a couple of 100 years. And let's say that's not right. Let's say they got this letter in 600 BC or just earlier. They had to get it in Jeremiah's time, and he prophesied 41 or so years, 40 years ahead of the Babylonians coming in. I said, Jeremiah, Obadiah would have been the writer, but if they got it in that time frame, they still had years to read that and consider it and do something about it. And when God started doing away with those people, one thing at a time, the Nabateans to start with, the Babylonians, Israel come in there, different ones come in there and overrun them, they did what you and I probably try to do. Did you make a mistake yesterday? If you did, what did you do about it? Did you make a mistake last week? Did you sin? Hurt somebody? What did you do about it? Well, I've made mistakes. And my mistakes go all the way back for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. And you know where my mistakes are today in terms of God? Time doesn't help a bit. I may have forgotten. I may have hoped that the other party kind of forgot about it. I may have done all kinds of things. But one thing Obadiah teaches me is that time is not going to reconcile my sins before God. Judgment. That's what it teaches. They had hundreds of years, if that first date is right, to get their act together. What do you think would have happened if one of them would have started preaching and teaching to them that maybe they ought to clean up their act and maybe repent before God? Now, there's no evidence that did. And I'm convinced God knew he wasn't, so it's not in the book. It's not there. But we know what God does with people who, in the right relationship with him, gets on bended knee and ask forgiveness. We know what happens. And I believe that opportunity would have been there for the Edomites if they had took advantage of it. But they didn't. And time, it didn't heal it. And time is not going to settle it for us. So if you have an issue, I don't care if it's 50, 60 years ago. You might say, well, the other party's deceased. Can't do it. Oh, yeah. That's right. You can't there. But with a penitent heart, you get on your knees and you ask God to forgive you. And I think that's very important. And that's where the Edomites might have gotten spared. But they didn't. It's a mute point. They didn't. But we have the opportunity because we know. And the opportunity is yours tonight if you're here. And you're subject to temptation anyway. If there's anything you need to deal with, the church family can help you with. Won't you come? All together, stand and sing the song.
Yield not to temptation, for yielding to sin. Each victory will help you some other to win. Fight manfully onward, dark passions subdue. Look ever to Jesus, He'll carry you through. Ask the Savior to help you, comfort, strengthen, and keep you. He is willing to aid you. He will carry you through. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. Brother Elton, will you close us in prayer?